Welcome back to another episode of Rock Boys Football. Billy Napier, the Florida Gators, starting to get it going in the transfer portal, landing another commitment. This one coming from a cornerback from the University of Oregon and Trikweze Bridges. And this is a guy that the Florida Gator fans who've been listening the last couple of weeks and talking about potential targets for the Florida Gators, Trikweze Bridges is a guy that we've mentioned a lot and one of my favorite cornerbacks that was available in the transfer portal. One, he's already played at a high level, at the Power 5 level, and you look at the passing attacks that he saw for the Oregon Ducks the last couple seasons in the Pac-12. A lot of good quarterback play, a lot of good wide receiver play. Trikweze Bridges is battle-tested with a lot of good wide receivers and quarterbacks that he's had to work against. And the second thing I love about Trikweze Bridges is the potential in terms of what he can be as a defensive back at Florida, I think is extremely high. I mean, you look at building a cornerback in a laboratory, this is kind of how you want your cornerbacks, right? 6'3", 200 pounds, physically imposing, a ton of length, gets his hands on a lot of footballs, and is able to put his hands on wide receivers and kind of be very disruptive in terms of the routes that they want to run. And you look at Austin Armstrong in the kind of defense that he wants to play, you have to be able to play on an island if you're a cornerback, right? There are going to be safety, but there are going to be a lot of blitzes in this Austin Armstrong scheme. And if you don't have cornerbacks that can handle themselves on the outside in those one-on-one situations, it ain't going to work. And a guy like Trikweze Bridges, I think certainly can do that in terms of what he can do in press man and what he can do putting his hands on other wide receivers. Really excited about this get. Going to talk a little bit about Trikweze Bridges, what he brings to the table. And then I want to have a little conversation about what Billy Napier is doing in the transfer portal this year thus far, as opposed to what he did last year. Really excited to get into this one. Before we do, just want to say thank you to you guys. A shout out to the Florida Gator fans. This has been a program that we've loved talking about. You guys have been extremely supportive. If y'all do enjoy the content, consider subscribing to the channel. Without further ado, let's get into Trikweze Bridges. And again, the first thing I think you want to say is two things in my notes. And after watching a lot of Trikweze Bridges, I've watched a lot of Oregon football the last couple of years. One, he's played a lot in a conference that you take a look at the wide receivers and the quarterbacks that he is going up against. That is arguably the best passing conference that we've seen the last 2 years, right? Michael Penix, Bo Nix, Caleb Williams. He's seen a lot of good quarterback play, and he's seen a lot of good wide receiver play, and he's battle tested. And you look at what he did in 2023, didn't necessarily play as much as you would want in 2023, but you look at how that Oregon Ducks team was loaded in that defensive back room, it makes a little bit of sense, right? They had Kyrie Jackson, who was an All-American for the Oregon Ducks this year, going to the NFL draft. You had Jaleel Florence on the other side, who's young, but will be going to the NFL draft and maybe even a first-round pick in the future. And so it was kind of a loaded cornerback room. He was kind of that cornerback 3 in that Oregon Ducks defense. And when he played extremely well. And when he was a starter in 2022, he played very, very good football, right? 5 passes defended, 3 interceptions. He has 9 pass breakups and 4 interceptions on his career. He's played a lot of football. He's played at a high level, but most importantly, what he can be when he gets to Florida and gets coached up by Coach Harris. That is probably what you're most excited about if you're a Florida Gators fan, right? The ceiling for Trikweze Bridges is extremely high. Now you talk about the fit. The fit in Austin Armstrong's defense, I think, is really, really clean. What does Austin Armstrong want to do? He wants to give multiple different looks. He wants to bring a lot of pressure. And when you bring a lot of pressure, you have to have cornerbacks that can handle themselves in those one-on-one situations. And Trikweze Bridges' ability to play press on the line of scrimmage and be that big, physically imposing cornerback where I got a ton of length, I'm going to put my hands on the wide receivers, and I'm going to disrupt their routes. That's the kind of cornerbacks that you need in this Austin Armstrong scheme. And there's no doubt they saw 6'3", 200 pounds, extremely long arms and said, one, this guy can be an elite cornerback, but specifically, this guy can be elite cornerback in our scheme and what we want to do. Really big fan of Trikweze Bridges. And you take a look at what Florida's doing in this 2024 transfer portal class. Now, you only have 3 commitments, but you're getting a sense of the players that Billy Napier and the staff want. They want guys who have played at a high level at the college football landscape, right? Joey Slackman coming from the Ivy League. There is a reason. We talked about him last night. He was one of the more coveted defensive linemen that was available in the transfer portal. He's a guy that's played dominant football at the Ivy League level. You look at a guy like the offensive tackle from San Diego State, Brandon Crenshaw-Dickson, a guy that we talked about yesterday night in terms of he built 350 pass block snaps and only gave up 9 pressures, a proven tackle that can be very, very good in pass protection. So 2 guys that have played a lot of college football at a high level coming into the Florida Gators, and Trikweze Bridges checks that box too. Now, what that is different from what you saw for the Florida Gators in the last transfer portal classes, there was a lot of guys that maybe were high ranks coming out of high school, or were guys that were coming from logos that you like. They weren't necessarily that good of football players, right? RJ Moten, many of you guys know I'm a Michigan fan. RJ Moten was a solid football player for Michigan, but there is a reason he lost his starting job at Michigan, because he just got beat out by some other guys. And so RJ Moten coming over, I think, was probably just a little bit of a reach there. You look at a guy like Keontae Goodwin, he ended up transferring out, obviously an unfortunate situation with his mother getting sick, but obviously a guy that didn't work out. And then the couple examples that I want to highlight, Damian George. Like Damian George coming from Alabama, you might be excited because the logo on his helmet was good. When he was at Alabama, he was not good. I don't know what made Billy Napier and the staff think that him just wearing a Florida Gators helmet was all of a sudden going to make him a phenomenal tackle. He was a liability for the Florida Gators in that 2023 season. So you grab a guy that, again, coming from Alabama, hasn't played much good football, and it didn't work out at Florida. I think Taraja Mitchell coming from Ohio State, very similar. Like there was probably a reason Taraja Mitchell didn't play a ton of football for Ohio State. Even though he was a high 4-star coming out of high school, he wasn't that good of a football player. And so what you're seeing now, and going back to this Florida class in 2024, these guys are proven at the college football level that they can play. And a guy like Trikweze Bridges, I think, is a really good fit. I think the second thing that you're really excited about is that they are identifying the places that they need to get better in, right? There are some position groups for this Florida Gators program that are really good and you're really excited about. The depth on the defensive line wasn't one of them. So you go in and get a guy like Joey Slackman who can do so many different things along that defensive line, play multiple positions, be very good against the run, and have some juice as a pass rusher. And then obviously the offensive line, specifically those tackle positions, you didn't have any depth. You didn't have any competition. You go out and get a guy from San Diego State who was very, very good in that Mountain West Conference, and coming in potentially could push for a starting spot. We saw Ohio State go grab a San Diego State tackle last cycle, and he slotted in and played very good football for Ohio State in that 2023 season in Justin Simmons. You look at Billy Napier, I think you're excited about what he's doing in the transfer portal, and I think you're going to see a continued approach at getting guys who are experienced and have played at a high level at the college level. Because you look at this Gators team, it's young, but it's talented. But it's young. And so you need to get guys that are experienced, that are going to come in and give you good wet reps. Trikweze Bridges, Joey Slackman, Brandon Crenshaw-Dickson all have played a ton of football and are going to bring experience and depth to this Florida Gators team in 2024. Excited to see where Billy Napier goes from here. He had a couple guys on campus that we talked about last night. Maybe some more good news coming. Obviously, National Signing Day now is kind of our main focus if you're Florida Gator fans. Appreciate you guys rocking with the boys again. If y'all do enjoy the content, consider subscribing to the channel, and we'll talk to y'all later.